This is my updated version for the Deadlands DLC. This is the Frostburn Warden double Froststaff build, and there's a lot of changes compared to the previous version because now, because of the charge trait update for this patch, and because of the fact that you don't need Frozen Watcher anymore, we don't need Defiled Dragon anymore. We can achieve all of those things without the need of those two gear sets now. So I wanted to do an updated version of this build so that people can see it in like a more optimized way now, because it performs and does the same stuff but more now because we don't need the gear sets we had before. So here we go. Obviously we'll start off with the attributes. Gone 17 into health, 47 into stamina. The reason I've gone so high into stamina is because I'm still planning on blocking with stamina even though I'm using a double Froststaff setup. Now you're going to see why in a minute. Because it can be really hard sustaining Magicka when you've got no Magicka recovery and all of your spells are Magicka based. So we're not going to use Magicka to block. So I'm going to show you in a second a bit more about that. For the Munderstone we've got the Atronach. Food we've got Bewitched Sugar Skulls. For the race, obviously I'm Imperial. Imperial's like my favourite class for tanking for most situations. In this case, max health, max stamina, and reduced cost of abilities by 6%. This includes dodge rolling, it includes blocking, it includes everything. It includes your ultimate cost. So everything is 6% cheaper. If you wanted to block with Magicka, you'd have to go with something like Breton. That would perform better for a double Froststaff build if you plan on blocking with Magicka. So for me, I'm blocking with stamina, so I want something with I've got the extra 2k stamina and the extra 2k health, so this is going to be better for me. So the gear for this one, Yolnahkrin charged ice staff front bar. Charged has been buffed this patch. If you look at that now, increases the chance to apply stats effects by 480%. This is absolutely insane. It's just absolute madness. Now, if you look at my glyph as well, absorb stamina enchant, that's really important. That's how we're going to get minor breach. So we don't need to use pierce armor anymore. We can get minor and major breach with a frost staff, because we can get minor breach with using a stamina and absorb stamina enchant, because it's physical damage. Deals 1, 9, 3, 8 physical damage and restores stamina. We need to restore stamina. We are going to cause physical damage. We're going to use the charge trait to proc that more often. What's going to happen is we're going to get a really high uptime of minor breach. I was testing this earlier in the week, and this was giving me somewhere around 80 to 90% minor breach just by using a charged and absorbed stamina enchant. So huge. Big change for tanks, the charge trait. Like, I didn't realise this originally. I saw someone talking about it and I was like, I need to test that. So we've tested it out, and quite easily we can maintain this, especially when we combine it with the Sundered effect, the Sundered status effect, and Caltrops and things like that. So it works really well. On the back bar we've got the Olorim Ice Staff. This is Infused Crusher. We don't need to use a Frost enchant anymore because the charge trait again is so huge. It just seems to proc really, really reliably for minor brittle. So we don't need to worry about using a Frost enchant anymore. We got Inkratis on the monster set. But yeah, on Inkratis, all sturdy, all tri-stat. That's what we've gone with. So, Inkratis monster set, max Magicka, really nice. When we deal flame damage, we create the Behemoth's Aura for 12 seconds. Gives our group a 5% damage buff with fire attacks. Reduces our fire damage taken by 5%. That's kind of the reason why we called it Frostburn. The whole point of the build is frost damage, flame and frost. It's all about flame and frost and trying to get those buffs out to our group. So we've got Inkratis there on the monster set. Some of the body pieces are Yolnahkrin, so as you can see there, we've got the chest is Yolnahkrin. We've got a Olorim sash, gloves of the trainee. So we've gone 5 heavy and 2 light. A bit more Yolnahkrin and more Yolnahkrin there. We're using 5 heavy, 2 light because we want more Magicka based stuff. We're trying to get a little bit more Magicka recovery and stuff. So I've gone with Olorim on the sash because I want that only active on the back bar. But then I'm also going to use, I want to incorporate a mythic item, so I don't want to have all the jewelry Olorim. So I've gone with 1 piece of Olorim on the body, and then gloves of the tradie because I'm front barring Yolnahkrin, I'm back barring Olorim, and then I've got an extra piece, I've got an extra slot of gear free. So I've gone with a trainee for a bit more max health, 1454 max health. And there we go. So that's that. Yolnakrin, obviously really important buff for all content. It's good for 4-man. It's good for 12-person content. It's good for everything. So max health, minor Aegis, max stamina, max health for the perfected bonus, and then when we taunt, we give minor courage, which is going to increase our weapon and spell damage for our group by 215. One of the best tank sets in the game, in my opinion. Very, very easy to use. You just got to taunt and it procs. That's going to be something we're going to be able to keep up very, very easily as a tank. For Olorim, we're using that because this is mainly going to be for 4-man content. This isn't really a trial build. This is just a nice, neat Warden Tank build. And Olorim, another good set. So we're going to have Magicka Recovery, minor Aegis that we've already got, so it's not really a big deal. When we're on our back bar, we're going to have Magicka Recovery again, max Magicka, and then we're going to give Major Courage. So all we have to do is on cooldown, switch our back bar, place down an AoE, which we've got plenty of AoEs on our back bar. Put that down. Our group picks up the buff, so we've got major and minor there for the group. And we've got the Incratus buff as well. So it's a full buff build. But not only that, we've got more stuff that's going to come in a second with our other pieces of gear. And our skills as well, sorry. Now, one of the ways we're going to maintain blocking and skill casts on this build is with a mythic item. So I've gone with the Talk of Tonal Constancy. I've never really used this much before, but in this kind of situation with a double Frost Staff build, I kind of find it pretty good. When your stamina is less than 50%, increase your Magicka Recovery by 450. So that's really nice. We're going to be casting all Magicka skills pretty much, so that's really important. While Magicka is less than 50%, you increase your Stamina Recovery. Now, Stamina Recovery typically isn't 100% useful, but the idea generally is that you're not... This build is not intended to be blocking 100% of the time. You're supposed to, like, know when to drop your block. With a double Frost Staff build, whether it's Magicka or Stamina, it's very difficult to perma block because there's not really many ways to generate lots and lots of resources back on a double Frost Staff build if you're permanently blocking. So if you block with Magicka, you've got huge amounts of Magicka drain, and all your skills are Magicka, which is doubling up on the drain of your Magicka, which makes it very, very difficult. In this situation, I'm not blocking with Magicka, I'm blocking with Stamina because we've not really got any Stamina casting skills, so we might as well make use of our Stamina by using blocking with that. Now, when we do drop block, we are going to get some bigger ticks of Stamina gain, and we've got some skills that are going to help us with that. So I'm using this as a kind of a fail-safe for when we're having troubles with sustain to try and get a bit back as well. Obviously, we're using the Absorb Stamina enchant as well on top of that, so there's plenty of incoming Stamina. Then we've got, obviously, 2 pieces of Olorim Jewelry. All of the gear, like, we've got 2 pieces Triune Magicka Recovery and 1 Infused Magicka Recovery. Now, the reason for this is we want to go and push those stats a little bit. I wanted to push up the stamina to nearly 30k. I wanted to have around 40k health. And then, obviously, 1 Infused Magicka Recovery, because I did want a big boost in Magicka Recovery as well. So there we go. We've got those pieces of gear. If you wanted to change this up for sort of a trial setup, you'd just drop the Mythic. You switch the gear to Worm and pretty much just Worm, Yolnakrin and Incratus for like a trial setup. And that would work really, really well. Okay, now for the skills. So, you might be surprised to see that I'm not using Frost Clench, and that's because you don't need to. One of the issues I've got with using Frost Clench is I don't want to stun enemies away from me in a 4-man piece of content. I want to bring the enemies to me into a stack. I want to bring them closer. I want to stack them up. I don't want to be throwing Frost Clench and keeping them at range because Frost Clench immobilizes enemies. Now, you could use Frost Clench if you want. Switch it. It's up to you. But the range of this, the 28-meter range, is much, much more important than trying to get that minor brittle, which we're already going to get anyway. So basically, you're just using it for major maim, which can be important for boss fights. So if you wanted to use in a Rage Frad pulls, use Frost Clench for boss fights. It is completely up to you. But I'm just going to stick within a Rage because it's not exactly necessary. We're using Razor Caltrops, and this is because it's going to cause Major Breach as an area of an effect. So we're trying to cause lots of AoE kind of debuffs with what we're doing here. So we've got Razor Caltrops. That's going to prop AoE Major Breach, but it's also going to help us proc the sundered effect because of the charged staff that we've got in the front bar. So we're kind of using it for that as well. Scalding Rune. This is, again, to proc our Encratis monster set. It does a bit of damage as well. It's nice and easy to kind of maintain. 18-second duration. You throw it down, it hits the enemy, and it stays there. And it'll just keep ticking your Encratis on cooldown. So as long as like your Encratis is procced and cooldown and then it's reset, it's going to keep procking your Encratis. So just refresh it, keep it down. It's going to automatically proc your Encratis. Polar Wind. Now, if we actually buff up with Polar Wind, we're at 40k health when we buff up. Look, so we've got our Warden buff. 41.8k max health, a lot of health. This also, it's a good heal. It's a 9k burst heal, 1k heal over time, and it's also going to heal somebody else in the group. It also does frost damage, which is going to help with keeping up our brittle. So it's going to cause frost damage for a few seconds as well. So not a problem at all. So a good skill that does a lot of different things. Bullnetch is the next thing, and this is a free skill. It's going to give us stamina over 25 seconds. Really important. So this is going to help us sustain our blocking while we're using stamina to block with a double frost staff build, because we can't heavy attack to get stamina back. This is the important thing. We cannot heavy attack with a staff to get stamina back. So when we combine Bullnetch, we combine the Absorb Stamina enchant, we're combining the Torque, we've got plenty of stamina incoming. So that is how we're going to maintain that. And this, yeah, and it removes negative effects as well, so it's a free purge. So nice and easy. Replenishing Barrier, we're using this on the front bar so that we can get some extra magical recovery. When we combine this along with Bullnetch, there's a passive in the Animal Companions which gives us even more magical recovery. So you want to have both of these front barred for this build so that you get the benefit of both sets of magical recovery all at one time. On the back bar we've got this skill, and this is going to cause a random effect, burning, chilled, a concussion. It's going to just hit that sort of damage. It's a nice way for us to keep up a bit of more, like if we need to, like Major Breach. If you're not keeping a great uptime on Caltrops, this is going to run for 60 seconds anyway. So if your Caltrops runs out, you're going to still maintain that Major Breach. So even if there is a bit of downtime on your Caltrops, maybe you can't afford the stamina cost of Caltrops, it's okay. You've got this skill that's going to proc. This is also going to help you with your Encratis uptime if your Scalding Rune runs out. It's going to help you with the Brittle uptime if your Blockade uptime if your Blockade runs out. So if skills run out, this is going to help a little bit because it's going to be ticking random effects, but also maintaining that Major Breach for you. This is a flex skill as well, so if you want to switch this skill to something else, then by all means, use this skill, switch it out. You could use Impulse if you wanted to. You could use Frost Clench on the back bar if you don't want to use Frost Clench on your front bar. You could use a wide range of different skills here to kind of help your group a bit more. You could even use something like Enchanted Growth. You could use some Living Trellis. You could use a wide range of different skills on that slot if you didn't find much use for using this skill. But I quite like it. It helps if things are going a bit crazy. This is still ticking away, so it's still proccing some of your effects. So even if your Blockade runs out for some reason and you're not proccing your Minor Brittle, if you've not got your Scalding Rune down, you're not proccing your Encratis, this will still help to keep those things activated a little bit. The uptime won't be as good as doing those things, but it's still going to make sure that the uptimes aren't zero, making sure that you are still proccing those effects. And it's got such a long duration as well. One thing to note is you can't precast this. This will activate combat because it causes damage. So you cannot walk into combat and without causing aggro. You will start the fight. You will start combat by using this skill. Unlike Ellie-Drain, the other morph, Ellie-Drain, does not cause combat to start. This skill does. So if you are using this, just be prepared for the enemy to start attacking your group, because that will create combat. Next, we're using Gripping Shards. This is a skill that you need whether you're on a boss fight or an ad pull. For ad pulls, you use this to immobilize enemies, so you pull them in and you root them, and you immobilize them with this skill. By putting down this along with Blockade, these two skills combined, and then switching to your front bar, you're going to put them both down, switch to your front bar, and then your front bar, because it's the charged effect, is going to cause Minor Brittle. And you can get an easy 100% uptime just by keeping these two skills down. You just leave them on the ground and they will do AoE Brittle with a massive uptime. You don't need to cause any other effects. You don't need a Frost Glyph. You don't need to use Impulse. You don't really need to use Frost Clench. You don't need those things, because just by keeping these two things on the ground, you'll keep a really good uptime. And then especially when you cast in other frosty skills like Polar Wind, they're all going to cause frost attacks, so you're going to be able to get a really good minor brittle uptime. Next skill, Wall of Frost. This is a weapon ability, so it procs your enchant. You crush your enchant, you throw it down, and it's just going to keep up your crusher. That's the main function. And number 2, it's going to keep up minor brittle. It's going to immobilize enemies. It's actually going to immobilize enemies as well, because when you actually put this down, switch to your front bar, enemies walk onto your Wall of Frost, and they get instantly immobilized because you're proccing the chilled effect, minor brittle, minor maim. You've got it all there. When you switch bar to your front bar, you charged Ice Staff on your front bar. So that's good as well. This is also good for giving back a bit of magicka. So when you actually look at your magicka based, so when you look at your Destruction Expert passive, when you absorb a damage shield, it's a good damage shield for like projectiles, especially for like ad pulls. When you go into an ad pull and you throw this down, gives your group like quite a big shield to deal with incoming damage. So that's nice to make sure you use Destruction Expert. You get magicka back when you use a shield from your Frost Blockade. So when you get hit with a projectile with your Frost Blockade active, you'll get 1,800 magicka back once every 10 seconds. So that's nice. Next we've got Expansive Frost Cloak. You could switch this for balance if you are struggling for magicka. This is a group buff. I like to use it. If you are struggling for magicka, just switch it for balance. Like, there's no need to keep this if you don't need to. So for dungeon groups, like usually you wouldn't even have this because most dungeon groups have a DK tank on the main tank or a Necro, and then they'll have DDs, and there's not usually a Warden, and there's definitely not a Warden using Frost Cloak. So in most 4-person content, the group will not have this anyway. So the fact that you're bringing it will help a little bit with survivability. But if you don't use it, it's not going to be much of a change from any other group. So don't worry too much about using this if you need balance. Balance is important if you need to use it. Frozen Device is my next skill. If you do decide that you want to use Silver Leash instead, you're going to have a real tough time sustaining it on a double Frost Staff build. You can't sustain Silver Leash on this build. Frozen Device is the one I've gone with. It is a little bit more tricky to use than Silver Leash. But the fact is you can pre-lay Frozen Device. You can throw it down if you know where things are going to spawn. That's the benefit of it. So it works better in arenas than it does in dungeons. In dungeons, it takes a little practice. You're going to have to get used to aiming it around the room and kind of figuring out how to lay it down quickly, because you can lay down 3 at a time, like 1, 2, 3. Things get pulled in. So you will need to get used to it. But at least it's a magicka-based pull skill. And that's kind of good as well. It does a bit of frost damage. It's going to help a little bit. It's going to cause major maim. So there's some little benefits to it. It is just kind of tricky to put it down quickly. Like trying to throw this down fast in an ad pull can be quite tricky. And especially when you've got to throw it like 15 meters away. Can be quite tricky to aim sometimes. It's going to take a little bit of practice. But I'm sure you'll do fine with a little bit of time, guys. Finally, Aggressive Warhorn. There's no other ultimate worth using on a tank in most cases, especially not a non-Necro. It's a group buff, major force, increased max magicka and stamina. Really useful. In terms of your passives, I mean, priority is to take obviously the passives that are going to benefit you as a tank. You don't need things that are going to increase your damage. So this is a good one. This is another good one, giving you ultimate back, increased magicka and stamina recovery by 12%. You don't need advanced species because you don't need increased animal companion damage. It seems in terms of green balance, you can actually kind of avoid the first 3, because if you're not using a skill, if you're not actually using one of these skills, then these aren't going to proc anyway. But your maturation passive is your group buff, which is going to give max health by 10% and minor toughness to your group. When you polar win them, they're going to get that benefit. Winter's Embrace, again, you can take the first few, but you don't need the last one. Increased frost damage and magic damage not needed, but you can take it if you want, if you've got the spare passives. You want to take everything in Destruction Staff. You don't want to use the Trifocus though. Don't use Trifocus. I was testing Trifocus with and without. It was better without Trifocus, so do not use Trifocus. Take those points away. I've tested it with both. It worked better without Trifocus. And then you want everything on heavy armor, and you only need to take the first 3 realistically for light armor. You can take the last 2 if you want, but increased weapon, spell critical, An increased pen is not really needed for a tank. Undaunted, obviously, you want to take the 2 Undaunted ones, increase your max stats, and increased amount of resource gain when you use a synergy. Support, you definitely just want to have Magicka Aid because we are front bar and barrier. And then all of your, obviously, whatever race you've chose to go with, then that's what you choose. Okay. On the champion points, obviously green doesn't make any difference. If you just want stuff that's going to be useful for 4-man content, Treasure Hunter, Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, Steed's Blessing. Blue CP is really important. On this one here, Extended Might, you've got to have these. Flawless Ritual, you've got to have it. Increases your chance to apply status effects by 60%. You need to have that. But yeah, you definitely want to have Flawless Ritual. You definitely need to have Battle Mastery as well because we need the martial status effects. We need to proc Minor Breach. The only way we can get Minor Breach is by proccing martial status effects as well with our Stamina Enchant. So this is what we're going to be using. You need to have that. In terms of the other CP, obviously you just take everything that's not a slottable. So Precision, Tireless Discipline, everything that's not a slottable. For your slottables, same as usual for me. Unassailable, Enduring Resolve, Duelist Rebuff. These non-slottables are the strong ones, take them. And then finally Ironclad. On your red CP, kind of up to you in a way. For the sake of being able to show you guys my stat sheet, I've put Rejuvenation on there, but I'd switch that for Sustained by Suffering instead, because Sustained by Suffering is a little bit more, and very, very easy to proc. So don't use Rejuvenation, use Sustained by Suffering. I've gone with Balanced Vitality for the extra max health. We've got some Expert Evasion for the free dodge roll, especially because we're using Double Frost. If we're dodge rolling a couple of times a minute, we definitely don't want to be having the full cost of those because it's going to be really expensive. So Expert Evasion is going to reduce a bit of the cost of that. You take everything that's not a slottable once again, but anything extra max health. We've got all the ones in here, so that doesn't need to be slotted. Hasty. These don't need to be slotted, so take those. Final passive that we've got, obviously Nimble Protector, and then Bracing Anchor. We want to reduce our damage as much as possible. We are going to have a bit of damage reduction on enemies, but this is going to really help, especially on a Frost Staff. Frost Staff versus Sword and Board, there's not much in it. So yeah, like in terms of it, like a double Frost build, it offers a bit more utility for certain groups. It provides that minor brittle. The difference between using a Sword and Board and a Frost Staff is actually very little now, because everything that you can get with a Sword and Board, you can now get in a double Frost build. So, for example, if you want to get Major and Minor Breach, you get that with Pierce Armor, but we don't have Pierce Armor on a double Frost build, but you just use a charged front bar with a Stamina, Absorb Stamina Glyph, and you're going to get Minor Breach. You can get Major Breach with Ellie Drain or Caltrops or something like that. So there's plenty of ways to get that. In terms of Minor Main from Heroic Slash, like we don't get the Ulti-Gen that we would get from Heroic Slash. But we do get the Minor Main because we're causing the Chilled Effect. The Chilled Effect procs Minor Brittle. That's going to increase damage. The Chilled Effect also procs Minor Maim, so we're going to get that as well. So we're still kind of getting everything that we would usually get with a Sword and Board. And the amount of increased like incoming damage, the difference between the Sword and Board and Ice Staff is very, very little nowadays. So once upon a time it was quite a considerable increase in damage that you would take with the Frost Staff. But now it's only like a very minimal difference between the two. So it's very, very simple and easy. And in terms of like a Warden as well, the Warden is one of the better classes to use because you've got the ability of using Bull Netch. You've got things that are going to bring in your stamina while blocking. Other classes don't have things like this, so it's kind of good. And if you spam this really fast as well, you'll get that first tick. So rather than waiting 1 second, you can kind of get it to just tick. So if you cast this really fast, you get that tick a little bit faster. So you can spam it to get stamina back like a tiny, tiny little bit faster. If you time it right and you spam it, because it's a free skill, you can kind of get it to give you that stamina back like half a second quicker. So just keep that in mind. If you're in a situation where you're losing a lot of stamina really quickly, if you do spam your Bull Netch, you can potentially get it back a tiny little bit faster. And it's going to cleanse you as well. So if you have got like stuff that needs purging, it's going to cleanse you. So it's worth doing. Nice and easy. In combat, obviously your main focus is to... You want to throw down your things really fast. So you're going to go in and taunt, and then you're going to want to throw down Caltrops, Scalding Rune, Blockade. You want to get everything going. And you just want to get it down quick because you want to be debuffing stuff really, really fast. You don't want to be waiting. You want to be debuffing stuff quickly. So you've got to go in, drop everything. Taunt, Caltrops, Scalding Rune, Backbar, Blockade, Gripping Shards. Even on boss fights, you do the same thing. Obviously, you can precast Frost Cloak. You can precast your Netch before you go in. And then you just run in and drop everything on top of them. So that is it, guys. That is basically the whole build. We'll just... One last go here, look. An important thing to remember is you do want to be light attacking if you can to proc your front bar enchant. You've got to be trying to proc that front bar enchant. Now this is one reason why you could use Frost Clench, is because, for example, only weapon skills and light and heavy attacks will proc an enchant. Using Inner Rage won't proc your front bar enchant, so you're going to have to light attack because we've got no weapon skills here. Blockade is a weapon skill, so it'll proc your enchant. So what you could say really is, if you wanted to use Destructive Clench on your front bar, that is actually going to proc your front bar enchant. So when you go in and use it, in a boss fight, potentially that would work out a little better because it will proc your enchant. So every time you cast it, it's going to proc your enchant. Whereas in a fire won't. So that is something to consider when you are selecting your skills and deciding which taunt you want to use. Like I say, you can use either or. You can use both. You can one bar in a fire for the range, and you could one bar Frost Clench for the buffs and the debuffs and things like that. It's really, really up to you. But yeah, this Travel to the House. I'll quickly show you like a really, really quick pass on a little dummy, and I'll just show you like how much Minor Breach there is. It's pretty good. It's actually pretty good. So, right, here we go. What? What's going on? Right, we go. Taunt, Chill, Major Breach, Minor Brittle, Minor Maim, Crusher, Scalding Rune, Minor Breach, 75%. That's good considering we're on a double Frost build. So, there you go, guys. It's really, really... It's nice and easy. You know what I mean? Like, you're keeping up all of your debuffs fairly simply. This has been the updated version, guys, of the Frostburn Warden build, the double Frost Staff build. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.